Adrian Wellington had everything a man could want. At 34 years old, he was one of London's most powerful and feared lawyers. His name was etched on brass plaques, whispered in boardrooms, and printed in legal journals. He owned a penthouse overlooking the Thames, a fleet of luxury cars, and a reputation for destroying anyone who stood in his way. His firm, Wellington and Associates, handled cases for royalty, billionaires, and governments. Adrian had never lost a trial. He had never been humiliated. He had never been wrong. Or so he believed. It was a cold December evening when Adrian decided to inspect one of his properties, a mid-tier office building in East London that his firm had recently acquired. He rarely visited such buildings personally, but his property manager had complained about cleaning staff irregularities. Adrian, ever the micromanager, decided to investigate. He arrived at 9 p.m., wearing a tailored black coat and leather gloves. The building was mostly empty. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The elevators were slow. Adrian took the stairs to the lower level, where the maintenance and cleaning crews worked. That's when he saw her. A woman, small, frail, with gray-streaked hair pulled into a messy bun, was on her hands and knees, scrubbing the floor of a staff bathroom. She wore a faded blue uniform with the name of a subcontractor stitched on the pocket. Her hands were red, cracked, bleeding from the cold water and harsh chemicals. Adrian stopped walking. Something about her made his chest tighten. The way she moved, the curve of her shoulders, the way she tilted her head when she coughed, a dry, rattling cough he had heard somewhere before. He stepped closer. The woman looked up, and the world stopped. Her name was Eleanor Wellington. 22 years ago, she had been the wife of a wealthy merchant, the mother of a brilliant 12-year-old boy named Adrian, and the most beautiful woman at every charity gala in London. She had laughed easily, loved fiercely, and never looked at anyone without kindness. Then her husband, Richard Wellington, had died suddenly of a heart attack, and Eleanor's world collapsed. Richard's brother, Uncle Victor, had taken control of the family finances. Victor was not a good man. He was a gambler, a liar, and a thief. Within 2 years, he had drained the Wellington estate. He had sold the family home, liquidated the investments, and blamed Eleanor for the losses. When she tried to fight back, Victor threatened her. "One word, and I'll make sure Adrian never sees you again. I'll tell him you abandoned him. I'll make sure he hates you for the rest of his life." Eleanor had a choice: fight and risk losing her son entirely, or disappear and let Adrian believe she had died of illness. A lie Victor would spread. She chose to disappear. She left London that night with nothing but a small bag of clothes. She worked in factories, cleaned houses, slept in shelters. She never remarried. She never stopped thinking about Adrian. And now, 22 years later, she was scrubbing a toilet floor while her son, her brilliant, powerful, billionaire son, stood over her in a 1,000-pound coat, looking at her like he had seen a ghost. "Mum." Adrian's voice cracked. "Mum, is that you?" Eleanor's face went pale. She tried to stand, but her knees buckled. Adrian caught her. "Adrian," she whispered, "you weren't supposed to find me." Adrian took his mother to a private hospital that night. He paid for the best doctors, the best room, the best care. She was malnourished, suffering from pneumonia, arthritis, and chronic bronchitis. The doctors said she had been living in extreme poverty for years. While she slept, Adrian did what he did best. He investigated. He hired private detectives, forensic accountants, and former intelligence officers. Within 72 hours, he had pieced together the truth. Uncle Victor had not just stolen the family fortune. He had orchestrated everything. He had forged documents making it look like Eleanor had embezzled money before disappearing. He had paid off reporters to write that Eleanor had abandoned her son. He had told Adrian, repeatedly, over years, that his mother was a selfish woman who didn't love him enough to stay alive. Adrian had believed him. He had mourned her. He had built a wall around his heart so high that no one had ever climbed it. He had become cold, ruthless, obsessed with success. Because if his own mother could abandon him, then love was a lie and power was the only truth. But now he knew the real lie. Victor was still alive, 78 years old, living in a mansion in Surrey, spending money that should have belonged to Eleanor and Adrian. Victor had even attended Adrian's wedding 3 years ago, smiling, shaking hands, playing the role of the loving uncle. Adrian made a phone call. "Victor," he said calmly, "I'm coming to visit tomorrow. Don't make any plans. Victor was sitting in his study when Adrian arrived, unannounced, with 2 armed guards and a barrister. Adrian, my boy, Victor said, standing with false warmth. What a surprise. Sit down, Adrian said. Victor Saturday. For the next hour, Adrian laid out the evidence. Bank records, forged signatures, testimonies from former staff, a signed confession from a man Victor had paid to lie, photographs of Eleanor, alive, working in factories, sleeping in shelters, growing old and sick while Victor grew rich. You told me she died of illness, Adrian said softly. You told me she abandoned me. You told me she was selfish. You stole her life. You stole my mother. Victor's face had gone gray. Adrian, I can explain. No, Adrian interrupted. You can't. You will never speak to me again. You will be arrested within the hour for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. Every asset you own, including this house, will be seized and given to my mother. You will die in prison, old man, and no one will come to your funeral. He stood up, straightened his coat, and walked out without looking back. Eleanor spent 3 months recovering in a private care facility. Adrian visited every single day. He read to her. He held her hand. He apologized over and over for not searching for her, for believing Victor's lies, for becoming a man she might not recognize. But Eleanor, frail, tired, beautiful Eleanor, only smiled. You were a child, she said. You believed the adults you trusted. That wasn't your fault. I became cold, Adrian said. I hurt people. I stopped caring. And now, Adrian looked at his hands, the hands that had signed contracts ruining lives, the hands that had never once reached out to help anyone without expecting something in return. Now I want to be someone you can be proud of. Eleanor reached up and touched his face. I was always proud of you, Adrian. Every single day, even when you didn't know it. Adrian broke down. For the first time in 22 years, he cried. Adrian did not return to his old life. He resigned from Wellington and Associates. He sold the penthouse. He donated millions to homeless shelters, women's refuges, and programs for displaced families. He moved his mother into a small cottage in the countryside. Her dream home, she said, with a garden and a creek and room for birds to nest. He lived in a modest flat nearby. He also visited Victor in prison once. Just once. Victor was broken, old, crying. I'm sorry, Victor whispered. Adrian looked at him for a long moment. Then he said, I know. And he left. He didn't forgive Victor. He didn't need to. Forgiveness, he realized, was not about the other person. It was about releasing the weight you never should have carried. His mother had carried that weight for 22 years. Now, finally, she could rest.